What happens when the weakest wolf in the pack discovers she was never weak at all, just caged? For Arya Thorne, life as an Omega meant invisible labor and swallowed dignity. She'd spent 23 years at the bottom of the Silver Pine Pack's hierarchy, shoulders hunched beneath the weight of 1,000 small cruelties, her wolf silent and still as stone within her chest. The other Omegas whispered their dreams of destined mates who might lift them higher. Arya had stopped dreaming the day she learned to make herself small enough to survive. But when Alpha Marcus Kane rejected her in front of 500 witnesses at the Harvest Moon ceremony, declaring her unworthy to stand at his side as Luna, everything changed. The bond didn't just break, it shattered, and took the magical chains wrapped around her soul with it. And what happens next? No one was prepared for. Not the Alpha who cast her out, not the parents who'd bound her power since infancy, and certainly not the ancient Lycan king who'd been searching 1,000 years for the one prophesied to stand as his equal. The Great Hall of Silverpine had never held so many bodies. Wolves from neighboring territories packed the massive timber structure until the scent of anticipation, sharp pine and honey musk, saturated the air. Arya stood in the designated Omega section, pressed between her fellow servants near the kitchen entrance, where the smells of roasted venison almost masked their collective anxiety. She shouldn't have been nervous. Marcus had never looked at her twice in all their years growing up. But 3 months ago, everything had shifted. He'd started watching her during pack gatherings, his storm-gray eyes tracking her movements across rooms. Then came the private conversations. The walks through the forest where his scent, charred cedar and ozone, overlaid with cold steel, had wrapped around her until she'd felt dizzy with possibility. "I see you, Arya," he'd whispered against her temple just last week. "Really see you." She'd let herself believe it. Let herself imagine a future where an alpha chose substance over status, where her quiet strength might matter more than her rank. Alpha Kane stood on the raised dais now, magnificent in formal ceremonial leathers, his dark hair pulled back to reveal the strong lines of his face. Beside him, draped in crimson silk that clung to every curve, stood Seraphina Cross, daughter of the Beta, beautiful and cruel and everything an Alpha Luna should be. Arya's stomach dropped. "My pack," Marcus began, his voice carrying effortlessly through the assembled crowd. "Tonight we celebrate not just the harvest, but a union that will strengthen Silverpine for generations to come." No. The word echoed in Arya's mind, but her wolf remained utterly silent. It always did. "Seraphina Cross has agreed to accept my claim as her mate and stand as Luna of this pack." The crowd erupted in approval, howls and stamping feet that shook dust from the rafters. Arya couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The scent of her own fear leaked out despite her desperate attempts to contain it. Crushed lavender and salt. Marcus's eyes found hers across the crowded hall. For one moment, something flickered in their depths. Regret? No, it was colder than that. Calculation. "But before we proceed," he continued, and the hall fell silent, "there is a matter that requires clarification." Dread pooled in Arya's chest like ice water. 3 months ago, in a moment of weakness, I spoke words to Arya Thorne that may have given her false hope regarding her position in this pack. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I need to ensure there is no confusion about where she stands." Guards materialized beside Arya, massive betas with hands like vices that clamped around her arms. They dragged her forward through the parting crowd, past faces she'd known since childhood. None met her eyes. Her parents stood near the front, her mother's face carved from marble, her father's gaze fixed firmly on the floor. They shoved her onto the dais and forced her to her knees. "Arya Thorne." Marcus's voice rang with alpha command, pressing down on her shoulders with crushing weight. "You are Omega, the lowest rank of our kind. You were never, could never be, suitable to stand as my Luna." Each word landed like a physical blow. The hall had gone utterly quiet now, 500 witnesses holding their collective breath. "Any attention I paid you was a mistake. A moment of misguided curiosity about what it might be like to lower myself to your level." His scent sharpened with satisfaction and something else. Performance. He was enjoying this. I, Alpha Marcus Kane, formally reject you as any form of mate or partner. You are nothing to me. You are nothing to this pack. The words hit her chest like a blade. And then the pain came. Mate bonds weren't supposed to exist between unbonded wolves. But something had been forming between them these past months, fragile and new, but real. Real enough that when Marcus spoke the ritual words of rejection, it tore. Arya screamed. Fire erupted behind her ribs, spreading through her chest in branching rivers of agony. She felt something fundamental rip apart inside her, felt her wolf, that silent, sleeping presence she'd carried all her life, convulse. But beneath the pain, something else stirred. Something old and vast and furious. The scream cut off abruptly as power surged through her body. For one blazing instant, golden light erupted from her skin, bright enough that wolves threw up their hands against the glare. The massive timber beams groaned. Windows rattled in their frames. Then it was gone. Arya collapsed forward onto her hands, gasping, her vision swimming with black spots. The scent of ozone and burned magic hung thick in the air. Marcus stepped back, his face pale beneath his tan. Get her out of here. The guards hauled her upright. Her legs wouldn't hold her weight. They dragged her backward off the dais, her boots scraping against polished wood. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard Seraphina's cruel laugh, high and bright as breaking glass. Wait! Her mother's voice, thin and desperate, cut through the noise. Please, Alpha, let us take her home. Let her recover. She is no longer your concern, Marcus snapped. The pack laws are clear. An Omega who disrupts a sacred ceremony with unseemly displays forfeits their right to pack protection. He waved a dismissive hand. She has until moonrise to gather what she can carry. Then she leaves our territory. If she's found here after dark, she will be treated as a rogue. The guards threw her out the main doors. Arya hit the frozen ground hard enough to knock the air from her lungs. Above her, the late autumn sky had turned the bruised purple of approaching dusk. The temperature was already dropping toward what would be a brutal night. She'd die out there. Everyone knew it. Behind her, the great doors slammed shut. The sounds of celebration resumed, muffled now, but unmistakable. They were already moving on, already forgetting her. Arya pushed herself to her hands and knees, then to her feet. Her chest still burned where the bond had torn, but the strange surge of power had faded, leaving her feeling more hollow than she'd ever felt before. Her parents' house sat dark at the edge of Packlands. She stumbled toward it, each step an agony of effort. Maybe her mother had meant what she said. Maybe they'd help her, hide her, give her supplies to survive long enough to reach neutral territory. She pushed open the door. Mom? Dad? Her father stood in the kitchen, his back rigid. Her mother sat at the table, tears streaming silently down her face. You need to leave, her father said without turning around. Dad, please. Now, Arya. His voice cracked on her name. Take what you need and go. Don't make this harder than it has to be. I don't understand. She moved closer, desperate. What did I do? Why won't you even look at me? Her mother's sob filled the silence. But it was her father who finally turned, and the anguish in his eyes hit harder than any of Marcus's words. Because we know what you are, he whispered. We've always known, and we don't have the strength to face what's coming. He thrust a worn pack into her hands. There's food, a blanket, a knife. It's all we can give you. I don't understand, Arya repeated, but her father was already turning away. Go north, her mother choked out. Into the wildlands. If you're meant to survive, you'll survive. They wouldn't say more, wouldn't explain. Her father physically turned his back, shoulders shaking with suppressed grief. Her mother covered her face with her hands. Arya fled. The forest swallowed her within minutes of crossing into unclaimed territory. The trees here grew ancient and twisted, their branches woven so thick overhead that the dying light barely penetrated. The temperature dropped with each step she took deeper into wilderness no pack had claimed in living memory. The barren reaches, they called these woods, the place where rogues came to die. The storm hit an hour past nightfall. Wind shrieked through the bare branches, driving sleet that cut like glass against Arya's exposed skin. She'd wrapped herself in the thin blanket, but it was already soaked through, offering no protection against the killing cold. Her hands had gone numb. Her lips felt frozen. She couldn't shift for warmth. Her wolf had never emerged, not once in 23 years. Just another way she'd failed at being what she should have been. Through the screaming wind, she spotted a darker shape among the trees. A collapsed building, maybe an old shepherd's shelter from before the wars. 3 walls still stood, enough to break the worst of the wind. She stumbled toward it and fell through the doorway into darkness. The storm raged outside. Inside, marginally protected from the wind, Arya curled into the tightest ball she could manage and pulled the soaked blanket around her shoulders. Violent shivers racked her body. Her teeth chattered so hard she tasted blood. This was it then. This was how she died. Alone in the dark, cast out and forgotten, her body never to be found. The strange thing was, she wasn't afraid. The pain in her chest where the bond had torn had faded to a dull ache. And beneath it, that vast presence she'd felt for one blazing moment. It was still there. Quiet, waiting. "I'm sorry," she whispered to her silent wolf, to whatever she might have been if she'd been born different, born stronger, born enough. "I'm sorry I wasn't what you needed." The darkness folded around her like wings. She was dying. She knew it. Could feel the cold settling into her bones, all her heartbeat slowing, her breathing growing shallow. Some distant part of her mind recognized hypothermia, knew she should be fighting it, should be moving, generating heat. But she was so tired. Her eyes drifted closed. She didn't know how long she'd been unconscious when awareness crept back, sluggish and confused. She wasn't cold anymore. That should have terrified her. Losing the sensation of cold was one of the final stages. But she felt warm. Arya's eyes fluttered open. Massive shapes surrounded her in the darkness. Her vision swam, trying to focus. Wolves. She was surrounded by wolves, their bodies pressed close, forming a living barrier against the storm that still howled beyond the broken walls. She should have been terrified, should have screamed. But the warmth seeping into her from their thick fur was the first mercy she'd felt in forever, and her exhausted mind simply accepted it. One of the wolves shifted, and moonlight streaming through the collapsed roof revealed its face. She stopped breathing. This was no ordinary wolf. It stood nearly as tall as a horse at the shoulder, its fur deep silver gray that seemed to shimmer with its own light. Eyes like molten amber regarded her with an intelligence that was utterly, impossibly human, ancient, powerful beyond anything she'd ever encountered. She tried to count them. 1, 2, 3 massive forms surrounding her. 4, 5, 6 pressed against the far wall. 7, 8, 9 near the doorway. 10. 10 wolves, each enormous, each radiating power that made Alpha Marcus feel like a candle beside a bonfire. You're not dying tonight, little one," a voice said. Arya's gaze snapped to the largest wolf, the silver one who'd been watching her. Its mouth hadn't moved, but she'd heard the words as clearly as if spoken aloud. Male, ancient, amused. "What?" Her voice came out as barely a rasp. The wolf's form began to shimmer. Arya watched in frozen awe as it shifted. Not the violent, bone-cracking transformation she'd seen other wolves perform, but something fluid and graceful as water flowing uphill. In seconds, a man knelt where the wolf had been. He was massive even in human form, easily 7 feet tall, with shoulders broad enough to block out the moonlight. Scars crisscrossed his bare chest and arms, the marks of 1,000 battles. His hair fell in silver waves past his shoulders, and those amber eyes held the weight of centuries. Or he regarded her with something that looked almost like relief. "We've been waiting for you," he said simply. Then she passed out again. She woke to daylight and the scent of aged oak, winter snow, and pine, clean and sharp and impossibly comforting. A heavy fur was draped over her, and someone had built a fire in what remained of the old hearth. Her clothes had been changed. She now wore soft wool that was blessedly dry. Arya sat up slowly. Her body ached, But the bone-deep cold had retreated. She was alive. Against all odds, she was alive. The man from last night sat near the fire, watching her with those unsettling amber eyes. He'd dressed in leather and furs, but somehow still looked more wild than civilized. Power rolled off him in waves. Not aggressive, but present. Undeniable. "Easy," he said as she tensed. "Yeah, you're safe." "Who are you?" Her voice was stronger now, though it still rasped. "My name is Dominic." He leaned forward, firelight playing across the sharp planes of his face. "Dominic Ashcroft, and I am, well, I suppose the old titles still apply. Lycan King of the Northern Courts, Commander of the Shadow Guard." His lips quirked. "Your protector, if you'll have me." Arya's laugh was sharp and bitter. "I'm nobody. I'm an Omega who got rejected and cast out. You have the wrong person." "No." The certainty in his voice stopped her cold. "We have exactly who we've been searching for these past 300 years." He rose and moved to the doorway, where the other 9 wolves, still in wolf form, waited outside in a loose circle, their bodies forming a perimeter. See, the Shadow Guard has served the Northern Court since before the packs formed their hierarchies. We guard the old ways, the old magic. He turned back to her, and something fierce and triumphant burned in his gaze. "And we guard prophecy." "Prophecy," Arya repeated numbly. Dominic nodded. "Would you like to hear it? The words your parents knew before you were born? The reason they bound your power so tight you couldn't even feel your own wolf?" Cold rushed through her. "What?" "Your parents didn't tell you." It wasn't a question. He moved back to the fire, settling cross-legged across from her with impossible grace for someone so large. "Then I will. There is an old prophecy, Arya Thorne. Older than the current packs, older than the hierarchy that places alphas above all others. It goes like this. When the moon bleeds silver and the weak are cast down, the matriarch will rise from ash and snow. Bound since birth, broken by betrayal, she will wake when all seems lost. Power that shook the world will remember itself, and 10 will kneel before 1, until the children of wolves are whole again." The words resonated in Arya's chest like a struck bell. Her wolf, silent all her life, stirred. "I'm not," she started, but Dominic held up a hand. "Your parents knew what you were the moment you were born. They felt your power, raw and vast and terrifying for an infant to carry. So they did what frightened people do. They bound it, wrapped it in magical chains so tight that your wolf couldn't even wake, let alone speak to you." His voice gentled. "They thought they were protecting you, protecting the pack from what you might become. But all they did was cage you. That's impossible." But even as she said it, Arya remembered the flash of golden light when Marcus had rejected her. The surge of power that had made the walls shake. "The rejection broke the binding," Dominic continued. "Not completely. Your parents were thorough, and undoing 23 years of suppression takes time. But it cracked the cage. Your wolf felt it. That's why you survived the storm last night when any other Omega would have frozen in the first hour. Your power is protecting you, even as it fights to break free." Arya's hands shook. She clenched them into fists. "If this is true, if any of this is real, what am I supposed to do? I don't know how to be powerful. I don't know how to be anything but what I was." "Then we teach you." Dominic's smile was warm, the first genuine kindness she'd seen in months. "That's why we're here. The Shadow Guard exists to serve the matriarch, to protect her, train her, stand with her as she claims what is rightfully hers." "Which is?" "Everything." The word hung in the air between them, heavy with promise. "The old bloodlines, the true authority, the power to reshape the pack hierarchy into something that doesn't grind the so-called weak beneath the boots of the strong." His eyes blazed. "You are meant to be a queen, Arya Thorne. Not despite being Omega, but because you understand what it means to suffer under unjust rule." Her wolf stirred again, stronger this time, and for the first time in her life, Arya heard it. A voice in her mind that was her but not her, ancient and female and absolutely furious. Finally, the voice purred. "He speaks truth." I have waited so long to wake. Arya gasped, pressing a hand to her chest. I can hear, there's, your wolf. Dominic's grin was fierce. She's been trapped with you all this time, conscious, aware, screaming to be free. Screaming, her wolf agreed darkly. But no more. The chains are breaking, little sister, and when I am free, when we are free, they will regret ever making us small. Arya met Dominic's amber gaze, saw the certainty there, the promise. Teach me, she whispered. His answering smile could have lit the darkness. It would be my honor, matriarch. The transformation began at sunset, yet Dominic had explained what would happen, how her wolf had been caged so long that her emergence would be more intense than a normal first shift. The Shadow Guard formed a circle around the clearing they'd chosen, their massive forms standing sentinel as Dominic guided Arya to the center. Don't fight it, he told her, his voice calm despite the tension in his shoulders. Whatever you feel, however much it hurts, let it come. Your wolf knows what to do. Arya nodded, fear and anticipation warring in her chest. As the sun touched the horizon, she felt it, a pull deep in her core, her wolf rising like a tide. Ready? Her wolf asked. Yes, Arya breathed. The shift hit like a thunderclap. But it wasn't pain, not exactly. Her bones didn't snap and reform like she'd seen other wolves endure. Instead, everything flowed. Yet her skeleton restructured itself like water finding a new vessel, lengthening, strengthening. Fur erupted across her skin in a wave of silver and white that glowed in the dying light. She fell to all fours, gasping as power poured through her. Her senses exploded outward. She could smell everything, the individual sense of each member of the Shadow Guard, the mice in the underbrush, water running over stones a half-mile distant. She could hear the whisper of wings, the underground movement of roots, heartbeats synchronized with her own. And she was still growing, larger than any wolf she'd ever seen, larger than the Shadow Guard even. Her shoulders rose higher, her paws spread wider. Energy crackled along her fur like lightning, golden and silver intertwined. When the transformation completed, Arya stood in the center of the clearing, and the world had changed. She could feel the earth beneath her paws like a living thing, could sense the threads of power that connected wolf to wolf, pack to territory, moon to magic. She turned her head and caught her reflection in Dominic's eyes. Her fur glowed silver white, edged with gold. Her eyes, once plain brown, now shone like molten sunlight. She was easily the size of a small bear, dwarfing even the massive Shadow Guard. We are beautiful, her wolf whispered in wonder. One of the guard, a dark-furred male she'd learned was called Kieran, shifted to human form. By the moon goddess, he breathed. The prophecy didn't exaggerate. Arya opened her jaws and let out the howl that had been building in her chest since the transformation began. The sound split the night. It wasn't just noise. It was power made audible. The howl rolled across the forest in visible waves, golden light pulsing with each resonance. Trees shook, the earth trembled, and every wolf within 10 miles stopped dead, their hackles rising, ancient instinct recognizing the call of something far above them in the hierarchy of power. In the Silverpine Packlands, Marcus Kane jerked upright from his seat at the high table, his wine glass shattering against the floor. That howl. Impossible. But he knew it. Knew her. Beside him, Seraphina had gone pale. What was that? Marcus couldn't answer. His wolf was trying to bow, trying to drop to its belly in submission to a power it recognized, even if his conscious mind refused to accept it. In a small house at the edge of Packlands, Arya's mother collapsed to her knees, sobbing. She survived, she whispered. Oh gods, she survived. Her father stood frozen, staring north toward the wildlands, toward the howl that still echoed through his bones. We need to tell them, he said hoarsely. We need to tell them what we did. The howl faded gradually, leaving a silence that felt sacred. Arya shifted back to human form, the transition smooth as silk this time, and found herself kneeling in the grass, every nerve singing with residual power. Dominic was there immediately, draping a cloak around her shoulders. How do you feel? he asked quietly. Arya looked up at him, then at the 9 other members of the Shadow Guard, who watched her with expressions of awe and fierce pride. Whole, she whispered. For the first time in my life, I feel whole. Dominic's hand settled on her shoulder, warm and steady. Good, because your training begins tomorrow. You have the power now, matriarch. Next, you learn control. The days that followed blurred together into a rhythm of exhaustion and exhilaration. Dominic was a relentless teacher. Each dawn, he woke her before the sun crested the horizon and worked her until her muscles screamed and sweat soaked through her clothes, shifting, fighting, learning to channel the massive well of power inside her without letting it overwhelm her control. Again, he'd bark as she struggled to maintain her form while he circled, forcing her to track his movements. Your power means nothing if you can't hold your shift in battle. But he balanced intensity with gentleness. When she succeeded, held her form through his feints, then channeled her strength into a precise strike instead of an explosive release. His pride was palpable. There, he'd say, satisfaction rich in his voice. That's my matriarch. The rest of the Shadow Guard trained her too, each bringing their own expertise. Kieran taught her to extend her senses, to feel the emotional signatures of other wolves through scent alone. Every feeling has a smell, he explained, his voice patient. Fear is bitter copper. Joy is warm honey. Dominance is ozone and musk. Learn to read them, and you'll know your enemy's moves before they do. A female guard member named Reyna, scarred and fierce, with fur like midnight, showed her combat forms. Size isn't everything, Reyna said, dancing around Arya's larger wolf form and landing precise strikes to vulnerable points. You need speed and strategy too. I make them underestimate you, then end it. Another guard, Marcus, no relation to the Alpha, thank the goddess, demonstrated how to use her empathic abilities. You can feel pack bonds, he said, the threads that tie wolves together. That means you can strengthen them, or... His smile turned sharp. In the right circumstances, sever them. That's a weapon no Alpha has. Between training sessions, they became something Arya had never expected. Family. They ate together around the fire each night, sharing stories and laughter. Dominic told tales of the old courts, when Lycans ruled openly and pack hierarchy didn't exist. Reyna recounted legendary battles with dry humor that had them all howling with laughter. Young Finn, barely past his first century, I'm the baby of the group, did impressions of pompous alphas that made Arya laugh so hard she cried. You know, Kieran said one evening, passing her roasted meat, we've waited 300 years for you. Watched packs rise and fall, seen the hierarchy corrupt what wolves were meant to be. Some of us started to wonder if the prophecy was just a story to help us endure. And now? Arya asked softly. He met her eyes, his own shining with conviction. Now I know why we waited. You're worth every year, matriarch. Warmth flooded through her chest. Not the painful, forced bond Marcus had tried to create, but something genuine. Chosen. These warriors had devoted their lives to a prophecy, and they'd welcomed her not with demands but with patient teaching and unconditional support. Thank you, she whispered. All of you. Dominic's hand found hers across the fire. You don't thank family, he said quietly. Their relationship shifted gradually, like the turning of seasons. Professional respect deepened into genuine friendship, then into something more. Something neither of them named, but both felt building in the spaces between words. He was careful with her, never pushed. But his scent, that intoxicating blend of aged oak, winter snow, and pine, surrounded her like a promise. And when their hands brushed during training, or when he steadied her after a particularly exhausting shift, electricity crackled between them that had nothing to do with magic. The bond between a Lycan king and a matriarch is different from fated mates, he told her one night as they stood watch together, the others asleep. It's chosen, built, earned through trust and respect and what? Arya asked, her heart hammering. His amber eyes met hers, intense and vulnerable in a way she'd never seen him before. And love, if we're fortunate enough to find it. The bond snapped into place between them, Not forced, not destiny, but choice. Arya gasped as golden light flared around them both, warm and right and absolutely certain. Is that a yes? Dominic asked, his voice rough with emotion. Arya didn't answer with words. She kissed him, pouring everything she'd been afraid to feel into the press of her lips against his. He responded with a gentleness that made her ache, cradling her face like she was something precious. When they pulled apart, the bond hummed between them, visible as threads of light only they could see. "My king," she whispered. "My queen," he answered. Some the shadow guard, awake and watching from a respectful distance, broke into cheers. 6 weeks into her training, everything changed. Arya was practicing aerial maneuvers with Rhaena, learning to use her size to knock enemies from the air. When Finn came crashing through the underbrush in wolf form, his young scent sharp with alarm. They shifted immediately. "What is it?" Dominic demanded. "Scout," Finn panted, shifting to human form. "From Silverpine. Watched us for 10 minutes before I caught the scent. Bolted east when I gave chase." Arya's blood went cold. "They know I'm alive." "Not just alive." Dominic's expression had gone grim. "They've seen you training. Seen your wolf." He met her eyes. "Your old alpha will come, matriarch, and he'll bring force." "Let him come," Rhaena growled. We'll tear them apart." But Dominic shook his head. "There's a better way." His gaze fixed on Arya. "This is your moment. The prophecy speaks of the matriarch rising when cast down. You were rejected, exiled, meant to die. Now you're going to show them exactly what they threw away." Arya's wolf stirred, eager and fierce. "Yes, let them see. Let them know." "What do you need me to do?" she asked. Dominic's smile was sharp as a blade. "Be exactly who you are." They came 3 days later. Arya felt them approaching long before they arrived, her expanded senses picking up the thunder of paws and the scent of 20-plus wolves moving with military precision through the forest. Marcus Kane was taking no chances. The Shadow Guard had prepared carefully. They stood in a loose formation in a massive clearing, Arya at the center, our Dominic at her right hand. To any observer, it looked like 11 wolves. Impressive, certainly, but not impossible odds for a war party of 25. The Silverpine wolves emerged from the tree line in perfect formation. All alphas and betas. Marcus had brought his strongest. They fanned out in an intimidating display, and even in wolf form their arrogance was palpable. Then Marcus shifted, his transformation aggressive and showy. Seraphina shifted beside him, her beautiful face twisted with disdain. "Well," Marcus called out, his voice carrying across the clearing. "The rumors were true. The little Omega survived." His gaze raked over Arya, cataloging her changes with visible shock before his expression hardened into contempt. "And found herself some rogues to play alpha with. How touching." Seraphina laughed, while the sound like breaking glass. "Look at her, Marcus. She actually thinks she's something now, dressed in furs like she matters." Her scent, cinnamon, iron, and fresh blood, spiked with malicious glee. "This is going to be fun." "Arya Thorne," Marcus continued, using his alpha command voice, the one designed to make lesser wolves bow. "You are in violation of pack law. You were exiled and marked for death if found in our territory. These lands," he gestured broadly, "are claimed by Silverpine by ancient right. You trespass." "Actually," Dominic said mildly, not moving from his position, "these are the barren reaches, unclaimed lands, which means we have as much right to be here as you do." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "And who are you, rogue?" "Not a rogue." Dominic's smile was all teeth. "Yes, but that's not the question you should be asking." "Then what is?" Seraphina snapped. "The question," Arya said, her voice ringing clear across the clearing, "is whether you really want to do this." Marcus's laugh was ugly. "Brave words from an Omega and a handful of rogues. We outnumber you more than 2 to 1. And in case you've forgotten, Arya, you were always weak. Always nothing. Getting a little bigger doesn't change what you are at your core." "You're right," Arya agreed quietly. "It doesn't change what I am at my core." She took a step forward. "It just let me finally become it." Seraphina's patience snapped. Enough of this. She shifted in a blur of motion, sleek and fast and vicious, and launched herself at Arya with claws extended. Arya didn't even shift. She simply caught Serafina mid-leap, one hand closing around the wolf's throat, and slammed her to the ground with enough force to crack earth. Serafina yelped in pain and shock, struggling, but Arya's grip was iron. "I'm going to let you up now," Arya said conversationally, still in human form, still holding the beta female, one of the strongest wolves in Silverpine, pinned like a pup. "When I do, you're going to return to your pack and stay there. Understand?" Serafina snarled. Arya's hand tightened fractionally, and her power, just a thread of it, leaked through. Golden light flickered across her skin. Serafina's snarl cut off in a whimper of pure terror as she felt the massive gulf between their strengths. "I asked if you understand," Arya repeated gently. "Yes," Serafina whimpered. Arya released her. The beta female scrambled backward, shifting to human form, her face pale and her scent absolutely saturated with fear. She practically ran back to Marcus's side. The Silverpine Alpha's face had drained of color. Arya could smell his shock, his confusion, and beneath it, the first stirrings of real fear. "What are you?" he demanded. "Show them," Dominic said softly. Arya shifted. The transformation rippled through her like liquid moonlight. In seconds, her massive wolf form stood revealed. Silver-white fur edged in gold, eyes blazing like captured sunlight, easily twice the size of Marcus, even in his alpha form. Power radiated from her in visible waves that made the grass ripple. The Silverpine wolves stepped back in unison. Their wolves responding to the same ancient instinct that had made Marcus's wolf try to bow when he'd heard her howl. "But that's not all," Dominic said. "You wanted to know who we are?" The Shadow Guard shifted. But they didn't become normal wolves. They became something out of legend. Dire wolves, each one massive, each radiating ancient power that dwarfed even the strongest alpha. Dominic's silver-gray form towered over them all except Arya, his amber eyes blazing with supreme confidence. "We are the Shadow Guard," Dominic's voice resonated through their minds, a gift of the ancient bloodline that let him speak to all wolves present. "Sworn to the true bloodlines, protectors of the old ways, and we kneel before only one." As one, all 10 members of the Shadow Guard lowered themselves to their bellies, or heads down in absolute submission. To Arya, the psychological impact on the Silverpine wolves was devastating. Several whimpered. Others tried to back away and found their own instincts, forcing them to recognize the hierarchy being displayed. Even in a war party, even prepared for violence, they couldn't fight the truth their wolves knew on a bone-deep level. This was not an Omega. This was something far, far above them. Marcus shifted to human form, his legs visibly shaking. "This is impossible. You were tested as a child. You had no wolf, no power. You were Omega." "I was caged," Arya corrected, shifting to human form herself, the transformation effortless now. Dominic materialized beside her, placing her cloak around her shoulders. "My own parents bound my power before I could walk, terrified of what I might become. You did me a favor, Marcus. When you rejected me, you broke their binding. You freed me." She took a step toward him, and he actually stumbled backward. Behind him, his war party was fracturing, some wolves whining, others trying to make themselves small, all of them radiating the scent of submission. "I am Arya Thorne," she said, her voice carrying power that needed no alpha command to compel attention. "Daughter of the old bloodlines. The matriarch prophesied in texts older than your pack's founding, and you, Marcus Kane, made a mistake." Marcus's face contorted with rage and fear and dawning realization of exactly what he'd thrown away. I didn't know. If you'd told me..." "Told you what?" Arya cut him off. "That I was powerful? Would that have changed anything? Or would you have simply tried to control me, to use me to make yourself stronger?" She let the questions hang. "You rejected me because you thought I was weak, because I was Omega, because your hierarchy told you I was nothing, and you never looked deeper. Please." The word broke from Marcus's lips, an alpha begging. "I made a mistake." Let me, let me make it right. Accept me as mate. Be my Luna. Together we could... No, the word was final as death. You had your chance, Marcus. You chose cruelty. You chose status over substance. You chose to break what was forming between us in the most public, humiliating way possible because it made you feel powerful. Her eyes blazed. Now you kneel. I'm an alpha. Kneel. The command rolled out of Arya backed by power that made the earth shake. It wasn't a request. It wasn't even an alpha command. It was something far older and far more fundamental. The voice of a queen to a subject who'd forgotten his place. Marcus's knees hit the dirt before his conscious mind could even process the order. Around him, every single member of his war party dropped in perfect unison, forced down by instinct they couldn't override. Arya walked forward until she stood directly in front of the kneeling Alpha. Dominic and the Shadow Guard fanned out behind her, an unmistakable show of force and loyalty. You exiled me to die, Arya said quietly. Told me I was nothing. Threw me into a blizzard and celebrated as the doors closed. My parents, too afraid of what I might become, gave me barely enough supplies to survive one night and turned their backs while I walked into darkness. Tears were streaming down Marcus's face now. I'm sorry. Goddess help me. I'm sorry. Sorry isn't enough. Arya crouched so they were eye to eye. But I'm not like you, Marcus. I don't rule through fear and cruelty. So here is my judgment. She straightened, her voice ringing out so all the assembled wolves could hear. The territory you entered, these barren reaches, they are mine now, claimed by right of power and prophecy. No Silverpine wolf crosses into these lands without my express permission. Any who do will face the Shadow Guard. Marcus nodded frantically. Second, Arya continued, the practice of marking wolves as Omega, of creating a permanent underclass, ends. In any pack that wishes to remain in my good graces, rank will be earned through merit and choice, not assigned at birth. Those who were cast as Omega will be given new opportunities to prove themselves. Shock rippled through both groups. Dominic's pride radiated through their bond like sunshine. Third, Arya said, her voice gentling fractionally, my parents will come before me and explain exactly what they did and why. They will make a full accounting. Whether I choose to forgive them, that remains to be seen. It will be done, Marcus whispered. And finally, Arya's eyes hardened. You and Seraphina will announce to the pack exactly what happened here. Every detail. Let them know that the Omega you cast out is matriarch. That you knelt before her. That new laws are in effect. And if I hear of any wolf in your pack being punished for their former rank, or any retaliation against those who can't defend themselves, she let power leak into her voice. I will return, and I will not be merciful a second time. Yes, matriarch. The title fell from Marcus's lips like a surrender. Arya stepped back. Go, all of you, and spread the word. A new age has begun. The Silverpine wolves didn't need to be told twice. They fled. Marcus and Seraphina leading the retreat, their tails literally between their legs. When the last of them had vanished into the forest, Arya's legs gave out. Dominic caught her, pulling her against his chest as the adrenaline drained away and left her shaking. You were magnificent, he murmured against her hair. I was terrified, she admitted. I know. His arms tightened around her. But you didn't let it stop you. That's what makes you a queen. Rhaena patted over in wolf form and shifted, grinning fiercely. Did you see their faces? I thought Marcus was going to wet himself when you used the voice. The old bloodline always did have excellent projection, Kieran added, his own grin matching Rhaena's. Young Finn was practically vibrating with excitement. That was incredible. The way you just caught Seraphina like she was nothing. They surrounded her, the Shadow Guard, her family, all talking at once and laughing and celebrating. And through the bond, Dominic's presence wrapped around her like a shield, warm and proud and absolutely certain. We did it, Arya's wolf said contentedly. We stood. We conquered. We are who we were always meant to be. Yes, Arya whispered. Yes, we are. 3 weeks later, A small delegation approached the clearing that had become the Shadow Guard's primary camp. Two figures, middle-aged and traveling on foot, their shoulders bowed with the weight of what they carried. Arya's parents had come to confess. She met them in human form, Dominic a steady presence at her side. The Shadow Guard had given them privacy, but she knew they waited within calling distance. Her mother spoke first, her voice hoarse with tears. "We bound you when you were 6 months old. The power was already manifesting. Objects would move when you cried. The air would shimmer around you when you laughed. We consulted with pack elders who knew the old texts. They told us what you were prophesied to become. And you were afraid," Arya said. It wasn't a question. Her father nodded, his face carved with grief. Terrified. The prophecy speaks of the matriarch rising to remake pack society. We thought, if the Alphas discovered what you were, they'd kill you. Kill all of us. We thought binding your power would keep you safe. Keep you small enough to survive. You stole my wolf from me, Arya said quietly. For 23 years she was screaming inside me and I couldn't hear her. I thought I was broken, defective, less than everyone around me. Her mother's sob broke the quiet. We know. We thought we were choosing the lesser evil, but we were wrong. We were cowards. And when you needed us most, when you came home bleeding and exiled, we didn't even have the courage to tell you the truth. You sent me to die, Arya continued, and her parents flinched. Gave me one night's supplies and directions north, I knowing I'd never survive without my wolf. We hoped, her father whispered. We didn't know about the Shadow Guard, but we knew the old stories. Knew that if you were truly the matriarch, something would save you. It was a desperate, terrible gamble with your life, and we have no right to ask your forgiveness. Silence stretched between them. Arya felt Dominic's presence through the bond. Not pushing, not advising, just there. Supporting whatever choice she made. I won't lie and say this doesn't hurt, Arya said finally. You stole my childhood. My chance to grow into my power naturally. You let me suffer thinking I was worthless. She took a breath. But I also understand fear. And I understand the impossible position you thought you were in. Her mother looked up, hope and anguish warring on her face. I'm not ready to forgive you, Arya continued. That may take years. It may never fully happen, but... She straightened her shoulders. I am willing to let you earn your way back. There's a new order coming. Wolves who were marked Omega will need advocates. People who understand what it means to be powerless and can speak for them as they find their strength. If you want to atone, that's where you start. We will, her father said immediately. Anything, everything. Then go. Arya gestured toward the forest. Spread the word. Help those who need it. And maybe someday we can stand in the same room without this pain between us. Her parents left, bowing deeply to her before they went. Arya watched them disappear into the trees, feeling something in her chest shift. Not healing, exactly, but the first step toward it. On Dominic's hand found hers. That took strength, he said quietly. Or weakness, Arya replied. I'm not sure which. Strength, he insisted. Weakness would have been refusing to see their humanity, refusing to give them a chance to be better. He tugged her closer. You didn't excuse what they did. You just refused to let it define either of you forever. That's Queen's mercy. Arya leaned into him, breathing in his scent, letting it ground her. What happens now? Now? Dominic's smile was warm. Now we build. Your territory needs to be formalized. Other packs need to hear about the new laws. And there will be challenges. Not every alpha will accept change gracefully. Sounds like trouble, Arya said. Undoubtedly. His eyes gleamed. But you're not alone, matriarch. You have the Shadow Guard. You have me. And you have your own strength, which is considerable. The bond between them hummed with shared certainty. Arya rose up on her toes and kissed him, pouring gratitude and love and fierce determination into the contact. When they pulled apart, the clearing had filled with the rest of the guard, returned from patrol, grinning at the display of affection. Are we interrupting? Reyna asked innocently. Always, Dominic replied, not taking his eyes off Arya. They laughed, the sound echoing through the forest. And for the first time since this all began, Arya felt the future stretching before her, not as a threat but as a promise. She was Arya Thorne. She was matriarch. She was queen. And she was exactly where she was meant to be. 6 months passed in a blur of building and growing and claiming. Or Arya's territory, formerly named the Silver Reach, expanded to encompass all the formerly unclaimed wildlands. Wolves who'd been cast out as rogues or marked as Omega found their way to her, drawn by stories of a queen who'd risen from nothing. She welcomed them all, and the Shadow Guard helped her build a community based on merit and choice, rather than the rigid hierarchy that had defined pack life for generations. Other packs watched, some with interest, some with hostility, but none dared challenge her openly. Not after word spread of what had happened to Marcus Kane's war party. Arya trained constantly, refining her control, learning the full extent of her abilities. She could heal with a touch, could sense emotional bonds and strengthen or weaken them, could command with the voice that made even the proudest alpha bow. And her wolf was magnificent, a creature of legend that drew gasps and submission wherever they went. But it was her partnership with Dominic that truly defined her rule. They led together, king and queen, Lycan and matriarch. His centuries of experience balanced her fresh perspective. His steady presence grounded her flights of idealism. And their bond, chosen and built on genuine love, became the foundation stone of everything they created. On the night of the winter solstice, under a moon that hung huge and silver in a crystal-clear sky, they made it official. The entire Silver Reach pack gathered in the Great Clearing, nearly 200 wolves now from all walks of life. The Shadow Guard stood as witnesses as Arya and Dominic spoke their vows, the ancient words of binding that joined Lycan King to Matriarch Queen. When they kissed, our power erupted around them, silver and gold light twining together, visible proof of their union. The assembled pack howled their approval, the sound rolling across the forest like thunder. Afterward, during the feast, Kieran approached with news. Scouts report unusual movement at the northern border. Not hostile, exactly. But something's coming. Arya exchanged a look with Dominic. Something? The old texts speak of trials, Dominic said slowly. Tests that come for those who claim ancient power. I'd hoped we had more time, but he shrugged. The world doesn't wait for convenience. What kind of trials? Arya asked. Rhaena appeared at her shoulder. The kind that prove you're worthy of what you've claimed, or destroy you trying. Through the bond, Arya felt Dominic's concern, but also his absolute confidence in her strength. She reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his. Then we'll face it, she said simply. Together. The celebration continued around them, but Arya found herself staring north, where the forest grew dark and deep. Somewhere out there, something was stirring, something that would test everything she'd become. But she wasn't the scared, broken Omega who'd been cast out 6 months ago. She was matriarch, she was queen. She had a mate who stood with her as equal, a guard who would die to protect her, and a pack who believed in her vision of a better world. Whatever came next, she would meet it head-on, and she would win, because that's what queens did. And so Arya Thorne's journey began. From Omega to matriarch, from victim to queen, from powerless to unstoppable. She learned that true strength isn't given or inherited, but forged in the fires of rejection and pain and choice. She discovered that family isn't always blood, but the ones who stand with you when the world turns dark. And she proved that the greatest power isn't domination, but the courage to rebuild broken systems into something better. Marcus Kane learned that cruelty has consequences, that status built on subjugation crumbles, and that the wolf you cast aside today might become the queen you kneel before tomorrow. And the Shadow Guard, those ancient warriors who'd waited 3 centuries for their matriarch, finally came home. But this is only the beginning. The trials Kieran warned of are real, and they're coming. Ancient evils stir in the deep places of the world. Old enemies sharpen their claws. And a blood moon rises on the horizon, bringing with it a prophecy even darker than the first. What did you think of Arya's transformation? Have you ever felt underestimated, only to prove everyone wrong? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with fellow wolf story lovers. Subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell so you never miss the next chapter of Arya's journey. Because trust me, what comes next will change everything. Thank you for listening. We'll see you in the next chapter.